This episode is brought to you by Big Box VR, the makers of Smashbox Arena, one of the hottest competitive multiplayer games out for VR right now, and personally one of my favorites. Smashbox Arena will be headlining a VR esports exhibition match at the upcoming Dota 2 Zotac Cup Masters. Zotac, HTC Vive, ESL, and Big Box VR are creating the world's first VR invitational with the gold standard of esports production and global live stream on Twitch. 4 of the top Smashbox Arena players from around the world will be meeting up to duke it out using the Zotac VR Go wireless backpack PCs. For more information and to watch it live online on June 3rd, go to twitch.tv/Zotac_Cup. Again, that's twitch.tv/ZOTAC_Cup. What's going on, guys? Zane here with Everything Vive. I want to welcome you back for another episode. So I know we're supposed to be sharing our news and game talk episode with you as per our normal schedule, but we did an interview very recently that we wanted to share with you as soon as humanly possible. And that's because that interview was with Daniel O'Brien, the GM, General Manager of HTC Vive. And as you'll hear in the interview, Daniel is probably the primary reason that we all have an HTC Vive sitting in our homes today. We do a deep dive into the history of the Vive, starting with the partnership between HTC and Valve, going to GDC of 2015 and what that experience was like, and of course looking to the future to see what HTC Vive has coming down the road. We're super excited to be sharing this with you guys, and we really do hope you enjoy, so without further ado, let's jump right in. Daniel, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for taking the time out. We really appreciate it, and Ronnie will be joining us shortly, but how's your day going?
My day's going great. We actually had some announcements today with our partner Google, and it's busy. We're plowing forward with a lot of things on the overall Vive family and products, and so we're nonstop all the time.
Awesome. Well, we will we can jump into that a little bit later. For now, though, I want to set the mood a little bit here and give you a little backstory about where I'm coming from. So I want to say, well, a year ago, I know the Vive had just launched, and I had no idea anything about VR. Ronnie has been following VR for a while, so it wasn't until maybe August of last year that he calls me over to his place and asks, he says, hey, I got this new VR thing I want you to check out. It's pretty cool. And to me, I'm thinking, I tried Google Cardboard and some other different VR things, and I was like, okay, whatever. Ronnie's inviting me over. Let me go see what he's got going on. Lo and behold, first time I had run into the Vive, and mind was blown. I think I played The Blue, The Lab, Raw Data, some of the other bigger titles that were out then, and he was having a blast showing me. He had to kick me out because his wife and kid were ready to go to bed because I was there just wanting to play the entire night. And so I guess to start this off, you are the general manager for HTC Vive, but I want to know what was the moment that sold you on VR? If you can recall exactly what it is, I'm sure you've had many moments that have kind of blown you away, being as close to the development as you are. But if you can remember maybe the first time you were absolutely sold on VR and said, I got it, this is awesome, and yeah, if you can share that experience with us.
I think it was back in like April 2014, and Peter Chow was our CEO at the time, and I was phasing off of a software security project that I had been working on with engineering for about a year. And Peter called me and said, "Hey Dan, I really want you to go. I have this partnership that I'm working on and I'm doing, and with a company called Valve, and they're right down the street in Bellevue. Our labs have been working on some VR stuff and AR stuff, and I want you to go over and see this." And so I went over to the Valve office, and I did the fiducial marker room, that had it had room scale tracking, with a camera on the front, and it had the markers all over the wall. And I walked in there and I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to go check it out. And I did this demo, and right there, I kind of said, "Wow," because at that moment they made me feel really, really small, and I realized very, very quickly how comfortable I was and what kind of scale I could show. And my mind immediately just started racing of like the things that we could do with it. And I had been a product guy for, I don't know, 15 plus years, and making smartphones, doing new technology, and I've done a lot of the first technology products. And I came back from the demo, or while I was at the demo, I took the headset off, and I was like, "All right, I'm going to make this. I'm going to make it a real." And I was like, "And it can't look like this," And they just started looking at me like, "What? What do you mean?" And because I'm looking at a glued together prototype, and I just like started going crazy with, okay, well, this is what we have to do, and we have to do this, and we need, the first thing I did when I did that demo was stick my hands out, and I was like, wait, I need my hands. I got to be able to interact with things. And so I came back and I talked to Peter, and I said, I'm absolutely going to do this. And I cannot wait to get moving on this project. I cannot wait to lead the VR team and get going. And so he was very excited that I was excited. And it all kind of just took off from there very, very fast.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, it's the first time in VR, I feel like that experience it's very easy to get super excited about. Do you remember exactly what the demo was, or did it ever end up turning into something or being like an Easter egg in the lab? Or I'm just curious what exactly, more what the experience was.
Yeah, I forget what Valve actually called that demo, but it was their very first like positional tracked room scale demo, and it was a series of different experiences where you could you were in a room full of pipes, and you could kind of look at this very extended view, and then you were kind of at the edge of a cliff, and you could like look all the way down. And if you had, severe height fears, you would actually be very, very scared. I was fortunate not to have a fear of heights. And I remember there was a huge robot in the room, and some people found this very daunting. But I immediately took my head and put it right into the robot to see all the gears working on the inside. And so I could feel those moments where I should have fear, and I did have a little bit of fear, or that emotional attachment to the content and the experience. But my mind just started going into engineering mode of like, okay, we're going to change education, we're going to change medical, we're going to change gaming, we're going to change we're going to change everything. And so, and then I remember one of the other demos where I was in the room that I was in, and I had to go over to the wall and flip the light switch. And I flipped the light switch, and they were like, telling me how accurate that was. And I immediately looked at that and said, well, I hope we don't show Jon Stewart on The Daily Show that we can flip the light switch in VR that's actually there in the room that we're in, because I'm pretty he's going to make fun of us. But it was really the science. It was really the science behind it that was amazing. The accuracy levels of what you could do from an input standpoint and interaction standpoint, and do it so comfortably. I took the headset off, zero nausea, zero latency effects. I just felt fine, and I was like, okay, I've tried some VR. It's all been bad. That was amazing.
Gotcha. Okay, just really quickly, want to introduce Ronnie here. He just got in. Ronnie, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Good. Hey, Ronnie. This is Dan.
Hi, Dan. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm doing well. How about you? Doing
not too bad. It was a pretty busy day, but I'm glad to be here talking with you. So, what have you guys? I'm gonna get filled in, I guess, by Zane here.
Yeah. So, well, just to follow up on that, it's interesting that Daniel, you were saying your first experience when you put it on, you immediately wanted to use your hands. So, how did the process for the controllers come about? And was that? It sounds like it was something that was a necessity or something that you deemed was necessary early on. But I'm just curious, maybe the development, like the thought process that went behind that, and why didn't you include other, the feet or just other things? And yeah, I guess so. If you can maybe elaborate a little bit more on how that came about.
the first thing to solve and the first big problem to work through was definitely the HMD, right? And how we were going to do that, because we knew we weren't going to use a room full of fiducial markers all over the room. And, Valve had been working on the Steam VR tracking system and the laser tracking and all of those things. And we were meeting with Valve on a very regular basis. I mean, our engineers were actually in their office. Their engineers were in our offices. We were very, very integrated in terms of how we were working together. And that was really, really, really a pretty amazing experience. We all knew and we all discussed from day one, like, okay, we need to build input. We need to have that. We know that there's an extreme value in that. It was October 14th, I think it was about that day. And we had a secret meeting with about 30 developers at the Valve offices where everything was under NDA, and we talked to the developers about what we were doing and what we were building, and we said we're going to do room scale VR, and it's going to be the promise of VR. And we sat down for, I think, 3 days. Joe Ludwig and Jeremy and Chet Falzik and Augusta and all of the different engineers at Valve talking about how the tracking was going to work, our team talking about how the hardware was going to work. And I think all these developers that were in the room were just like exasperated of just excitement and shock and awe of like what we were doing and how we were doing this in secret. And, and I remember at that meeting, like everybody talking to us, and some guys had Hydra controllers and things like that for input, and it was rough. And the discussion was very, very clear at that point, too, that we need to have input, have really, really good input. And so the prototyping, just began of how to do the controllers. And we knew from, at that point, we were very, very clear that you had to have very good input. It had to be tracked as well as the headset, because, it had to be as accurate from a, sub-millimeter tracking accuracy. So those are big problems to solve. And
so if I could just butt in there, like, because that's a really interesting point. Did the Lighthouse tracking system come prior to knowing exactly what objects you were going to track, or was it the other way around? Was it that you guys knew that you were going to, have this more complicated system, and so you needed something to accommodate that?
No, I think the Steam VR tracking guys that were working on that, they always knew that there would be multiple objects that they would want to track. We just knew that your hands and your head were the first two things that we had to get right.
Got it.
And that was really, really important. The tracking system that they developed was just brilliant, and it was very robust. And the early days we had these the base stations. I think we called them Batman. They were they were just huge and black, and these big objects, and they had red lasers, infrared lasers in them, and these red eyes, and they broke down all the time because they were hand built, and that was fun days of keeping those things working, where we all had soldering irons and glue guns and all kinds of stuff. And we handled them with very delicate care and wrapping and movement. But the input problem of the controller, we knew from day one. And then we really, we talked to developers, and we decided very, very early on that we told them we're going to put the headset, 2 base stations, and 2 controllers in the retail box. And this was like a year out from the commercial decision. Like, we knew we were going to do that. And we made that decision not for ourselves. We made that decision for developers, because then we knew at that point, if we told developers to have confidence to build the VR experience that they truly dreamed of, whether it was standing and movement and input interaction, or if it was seated, and using it in a gamepad. Like, we gave them complete freedom to do what they wanted to do, and we told them that the users would have room scale tracking with 360-degree tracking, and that they would have input. And so they knew right then and there that they had 100% adoption of 360-degree tracking and input, and so they could build that experience knowing that it would one-for-one go with their.
And it's interesting
game.
because, I mean, that was such a brilliant idea. And I mean, if you were able to do it, I'm sure it's one of those things. I mean, even to this day, you see software come out that, you know, is developed for systems that aren't as capable out of the box per se. And they aren't able to take advantage of a lot of those things, you know, all the time because they can't guarantee that all users will have it. Either the touch is there or it's not, you know, the motion controllers is there or it's not, or, you know, you're not able to have, you know, full 360 tracking. So you have to have, you know, most of the enemies come from one direction or this or that, but I mean, it's, yeah, comparing the software that is able to run on the Vive compared to, you know, other solutions out there, it's kind of, I mean, it's a testament. I feel like developers must be must be praying to you guys, as far as just so thankful that you guys had such a fully featured product, you know, in box, and that you guys were pushing it like that so early on.
Well, we kind of felt like delivering something under that would actually not be delivering on what the promise of VR would be. Mm-hmm. And it also, knowing a little bit about innovators and the adoption curve and the adoption, bell curve of innovators to early adopters to early mass, and, you know, as you get into those laggards, like, this is a disruptive new technology. You're asking people to interact with digital content by putting things on their face and putting things in their. This is fundamentally breaking, you know, any way of interacting with digital content like it was before. And so when you bring a disruptive technology like that to market, you're really talking to a very innovative audience. And those are the people that are looking to have the full experience. They're not looking for the measures. And so we did think about that not only from a developer standpoint, but we did think about it also from a consumer standpoint and what those early innovator consumers would want and the experience they would be demanding and that they would want to, you know, put hard dollars down against.
No, I think that's a really good point, because I mean, I can say from my point of view as a customer and a consumer, when I was, you know, faced with the idea of which VR headset I wanted to purchase, everything you're saying was very much, it was kind of one of those things, well, I'm either going to go all in or you know, not. And looking at the options that were out there, it was clear that HTC was really, you know, they were all in. They knew that, you know, this is a, you know, this is a new device for people that are looking for the top end experience. And if you're going to be shelling out as much money for a system like this as a lot of people were, you know, you obviously want the best. And the Vive was that. I mean, it still is the best, you know, consumer VR on the market.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, I mean, it's
funny because it's completely true though. I mean, I agree with you 100%, Ronnie. And I'm coming from somewhere that didn't have as much research and as backing in terms of, you know, my journey with VR. But, you know, as soon as I tried it at your place, I was immediately looking at what VR is all about, what else is out there, and yeah, it was hands down. It sold me on the experience. For
me, it was the quality of the product. I mean, 100%. Because to be quite honest, at that time frame when I was trying to decide, you know, what to pre-order and all of that, like, I knew more about some of the other solutions that were out there at the time compared to the Vive. Kind of early on, you know, there was kind of a build up to VR and all that kind of stuff. So I was familiar with some of the other products, but the more I learned about the Vive and what HTC and Valve were doing with their system, the more it was just impossible to ignore. It was, even before trying it, I just looking at how it worked, how the base stations tracked, and the type of experience that you were able to provide with room scale. you know, despite the fact that it's sometimes hard to find that much space, I knew that, you know, at the very least you want the system that's most capable, and then you can kind of, you know, apply it where necessary. If you have the space, great. If not, you know, kind of do what you need to do. But yeah, like, and I know, I don't know if you guys have talked about your first VR experiences
we opened up
a little
that,
bit, but I mean, one of the things that was crazy to me, I had my initial entry into VR with the Oculus dev kit, the first one, the DK1, and that was an amazing experience. I remember actually Titans of Space as being one of the first pieces of software that just kind of blew me away. And most of the thing that sticks with me from that first experience was being able to turn around and feel like I was completely immersed in something. You know, it wasn't that just necessarily that it was in front of me. It was really when I turned around, and at that time they didn't have any kind of sensors, so it was just, you know, you could turn around with that system and it wouldn't lose tracking or anything like that. But I thought that was amazing. And then when I got the Vive, I mean, the Vive was just a whole nother, being able to walk around and feel like you're in an environment rather than just, you know, just being able to move your head around. It was a revelation. And everyone that I talked to, I mean, I had people try out those early dev kits, and they weren't, other than me, I mean, a lot of people weren't 100% sold on, they weren't really sure how amazing VR was going to be, whatever. But then those same people, when I had them over to my apartment to try the Vive, completely different reaction, like 100% different reaction. They coming in, they thought, oh, it was just another VR headset like the one you showed me, you know, a couple years ago. They weren't that excited to try out the new one, right? And then they tried it, and they were blown away, and they couldn't believe it. And they said, "Oh my gosh, this is so much different than any VR I've tried before." And like you were saying before, it's because you have. I think a big part of it was the fact that you had motion controllers, and then the other part of it was being able to move around, and that being able to get over people's, you know, nausea and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to, before moving on, I wanted to put that out there, that it was, I mean, night and day. It was when people saw what the Vive could do. Yep. They understood that VR was here to stay.
Yeah, and so actually piggybacking off of that, I want to fast forward a little bit to, I believe it was GDC of 2015. Is that where you guys first made the announcement?
Well, it was that week. We actually announced at Mobile World Congress a couple days before. It was a pretty crazy week. We actually made the announcement of the partnership with Valve, and that we would be building a developer kit together in VR, and then we showed it to a lot of media, and everybody was under embargo. And then we got on a plane. Chet and I jumped on a plane and flew from Barcelona back to San Francisco, and then we started showing more developers openly, and media that was going to GDC openly our VR solution together. And it was kind of like a two-pronged announcement, and then everything just flooded, you know, I think 3 days into it.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question. What was that experience like? I mean, I know it was probably one of the craziest weeks of your life, but if you can recall maybe some stuff that stuck out, because it seemed like that was a real turning point for you know, where VR was going to go and what people were expecting from VR.
Sure. I think, you know, leading up to GDC and Mobile World Congress was pretty crazy, because you had two companies that were super excited to pull together and make this announcement. We had been working for months on messaging. We had been working for months on our, you know, just the content and the different demos that would be ready. Things were coming in pretty hot, because if you think about it, we were giving dev kits to developers that were even hand built maybe a couple months before that announcement, you know, and we were, so equipment was breaking down, developers were making stuff, Alchemy was working out of a garage, you know, Weaver was working, you know, some other guys were really pumping hard from the developer standpoint. We were doing, a couple times a week check-ins with the developers that were working on content. Valve was working on the robot repair. The hardware was being built. We were trying to get demo rooms set for Barcelona, and then Valve was getting ready for displaying in San Fran. And we had keynotes in Barcelona and messaging and feedback. Press pre-briefings. I remember Chet, excuse me, Chet Falzik and I were doing press pre-briefings with a huge group of press that were in Barcelona that had no idea that we were even partnered together and building something and revealing things to them in secret and under embargo. And just gasps of air, just shock and surprise that every time we went into a room and told somebody what we were doing, they were just jaw dropped, excited and surprised. And it was really great because we probably had over 30 companies under NDA leading into that announcement between the developers and, partners that were working on supplier pieces and then Valve and HTC, and nobody leaked. We were able to keep it all secret. And we kept leading up to the announcement day, thinking something's going to break, someone's going to leak, someone's going to talk, and nobody talked.
Oh, that's amazing.
Especially nowadays. I feel like that never happens.
Well,
we got to, I remember Barcelona, though, we got there 10 days before, and it took us a long time to get 2 demo rooms set up at that time, with booths being built, and I think there was a booth next to our booth that had the flamenco dancers, from Spain and Barcelona, and they were so loud that they were making walls that were holding base stations vibrate, and we couldn't figure out. The tracking was bad, and then we figured out it was the stomping next door, and so all kinds of crazy fun things. Guys like Doug Church, not sleeping for days on end, and I mean my own team not sleeping for days on end because we're just working to get everything. Customs, blocking our equipment from coming into country because they opened the box and said, "What in the world is all this?"
So how did you explain that then?
We just talked it through. This is a prototype virtual reality headset, and this is a computer.
It'd be so fun if you were giving demos at the airport too.
So it was all very, very stressful, and I think we were in Barcelona for 10 days, and then we got on the plane and went to San Francisco. We were in San Francisco for another 5 days, and I think my family didn't see me at that point for probably about 3 or 4 weeks, and I remember just getting home and being very, very happy to be home and seeing the people that I was working so hard for. So that was about a 3 week of just pumping it through, working hard.
After you get back from something like that and you get a chance to kind of take a breather and relax and get back, what's the next step? Where'd you take off from there?
Well, we opened up at that point. I remember we immediately turned our focus. That was a very developer-focused announcement. We really didn't focus on consumer or mass media. We focused on developer media. We focused on talking to our news and media that would talk to the developer community. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we had announced that we would be giving away hardware to the developer community, and we opened up a registry. And I mean, that thing filled up with, it went past 25,000 before we could blink of developers that were signing up for the hardware. And we were like, holy cow, this is going to get really out of hand. And so we seeded a lot of developers that we knew, that Valve had really good relationships with and knew that they were just going to build amazing, good stuff. And that was it was so great to have, Valve as not only the partner on the software side of this and the tracking, mm-hmm. but, the developer relationship and being able to talk to developers in very meaningful ways, from a credibility standpoint. And mm-hmm. they just, HTC kind of really came in and, we had our own studio team and our own dev team, and that was very experienced with the developer community, and it just became we kind of acted like one team for about a year. We still do in many ways, but at this point we were very much, just working in each other's offices. I think I worked every Friday in their office, and
Wow.
we would go through the list of developers, the different proposals, the different ideas. We were giving away kits to all these different, developers, and we spent the whole spring at that point just seeding the developers with the initial Vive developer kits, and those things went out with controllers, 2 base stations, everything to make it work. And
what were some of the things you were looking for when you were trying to find developers that you'd be interested to giving kits to?
Well, initially it was just people that wanted to build something that had input usage and room scale, and it was just working with people that were really smart, like the Northway. We knew they were going to build fantastic contraption, but we knew they were just really understood this. They understood the development. They understood creating something really valuable. They understood room scale. They understood all of those things. The same thing with Google. Like, we started working with them very early on. They were part of the early 30, that was in the room. Mm-hmm. The Alchemy guys, the Cloud Head guys, Weaver. Like, these were like really, really impactful devs that just knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we didn't tell people what to do. We just gave it to really smart devs and said, "You're going to go create something we're not going to think of anyway." Mm-hmm. And then Valve, and HTC at that point, developers that wanted to share builds with us and get feedback, we would do that. I mean, Valve had open door policy with developers that wanted to come work in their offices and get help. I mean, the original Tilt Brush guys, Patrick and I always forget his name, Joe. They spent quite a bit of time in the Valve office working on the initial Tilt Brush. And we spent a lot of time, just a lot of hands-on time, trying different content pieces, giving feedback, what was interesting, what wasn't. You had guys from Valve feeding back that really understood gameplay and good mechanics and making good decisions. And then every Wednesday, there would be demo days. And we would all sit in rooms and watch people do demos. And, Chet would, in a lot of ways, host this. He would just kind of let somebody come out of the headset, and they would just start a general question, back session with the developers in the room of okay, what did you like? What didn't you like? How, how did you feel coming out of it? Did you... it's just kind of general questions around the experience and feedback sessions for the developers. And so it really just became a very value-add session and feedback session for the developer to learn how to make their experience better, and what to work on. So, it was that process that we just worked on for quite some time. And that, we just kept putting out more dev kits into the developer, universe for, I don't know, I think we started giving them out in May of 2015. And then we knew we had our new headset leading up to CES, and we had originally said that we were going to launch in October, in Q4 of that year, and December, and a lot of people were expecting us to do that. And we had our new headset, our 2nd generation developer kit, which is the Vive Pre, and we had added the front-facing camera. And if you saw on the original developer kit, there's those 2 holes on the front. Yeah. Those were originally going to be cameras, but the cameras didn't work that well. But it was in the original plan, because those were to work with the chaperone system. And so in our 2nd generation developer kit with the Vive Pre, we got the camera working, and with the chaperone system. And it wasn't pass-through. It was actually, grabbing the imagery of the room and then processing it and overlaying that onto your virtual space.
Wow.
And that was a really big problem to solve. I think Aaron over at Valve was the guy that actually helped solve that, or did solve that. And so at that point, we knew that we couldn't just launch with this headset. We actually needed to get this dev kit out into developer hands, because it had the new controllers, it had much more better ergonomics, it had better button functionality, new button functionality that the original controllers did not have. Mm-hmm. And then you had like the front-facing camera and the microphone added. And so there was a lot of new things for developers to incorporate and make better, make their final versions of their games. So that's when we gave out, announced at CES the Vive Pre, and decided to give those units away as well to the developer community. And then we went into Mobile World Congress and we revealed the commercial hardware, which wasn't much different from the Pre, but it was really setting ourselves up to make sure that the content that launched with the commercial version, we wanted that Pre unit to be pretty close on purpose so that there wouldn't be many changes, it was marginal changes from the Pre to the commercial version for the developers.
Mm. Yeah, and looking at, preparing a product for the consumer market versus just sending out dev kits. What kind? I know the Pre was pretty close to the final version, but what are some of the things that you guys had to focus on the most to get it ready for the consumer market?
Between the Pre and the final?
Yeah, or just in general, or even it sounded like you guys had made a lot of those steps already with the Pre because you wanted it pretty close. Like, what were some of the, was it prettying it up, or were there more fundamental, like, user interface things that really had to be worked out before it was ready?
It was really, there was some cosmetic things that one had to be improved and fixed, but then the other piece was really comfort and ergonomics. Like, we actually decided that at that point to make sure, because we couldn't get the foam gasket to be final for everybody. We just decided, all right, we got to put 2 gaskets in there. We need a wide face. We need a narrow face gasket. And at that point, we just said, yeah, let's go to this version because it's a little more comfortable, a little more tighter, better blocking out the light, and the nose gasket. We needed to make a minor improvement on that, so it just felt better. And then, we started to look at, okay, great, this is the commercial thing, it's ready. And even as we, moved on from there, we really continued to make, running change improvements like the 3-in-1 cable and, things like, we'll be launching the audio head strap and thinking about how do we improve things like the weight in the product and stuff like that. But you never stop evolving it and improving it, making it better.
No, yeah, absolutely. So let's actually, since you mentioned the audio strap, I want to talk about the trackers because let's fast forward a little bit now. I know early this year, or late last year, you guys mentioned the trackers. What was the thought process behind that? And I know I was actually speaking with Damon about this beforehand. I know you're a big baseball fan, and I saw the baseball kind of sample usage that you've been talking about. Was this really just a ploy to get the Mariners some training, some private training beforehand?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm originally a New York guy, so I kind of grew up Yankees. I pulled for the Mariners now, but when the Yanks are in town, I don't. The tracker was really, we knew year one was really, year -1 was really about developers. We knew year one was about getting it right for consumers and those early innovation, adopters, and making sure that they had the experience that they wanted, and we were servicing the consumer through an experience that was benefiting the developer and also benefiting the retailer. And then we've said in year 2, it's really about looking at historical products and what took off and who won and why did they win. They won when they started thinking about the ecosystem and expanding the ecosystem. And the tracker was this brilliant solution by our engineering team in Taiwan that just said, hey, if we build this solution, which is essentially a controller without the wand piece of it that can be attached to other things, they're a phenomenal engineering team in that, if I look at when we were just doing test builds of hardware, they could prototype a hardware piece in a week and ship it back into the US to, Valve's offices and our offices to test it faster than sometimes the software developers could iterate on the software.
Wow.
That's how good.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, they are. And I don't think there's anybody better in the world than our engineering team, to be honest with you. But and I don't say that for just good measure of my brand. I've worked in other companies. I know how good they are. When we saw a problem in that building tracked objects, and while we knew Valve told us very clearly from the very beginning that they were going to open up the tracking and how to do all this stuff, and we were like, yeah, that's awesome. That means more things will work with the headset. Great. Really hard. It took us a year, right? Like, over a year to build the Vive, and build the developer kits. Like, it's not easy building tracked objects. It takes a lot of engineering, takes a lot of smarts, and takes R&D, and that's cost, that's time. And so the tracker just cuts the time. It takes a developer team, a peripheral team, a software team that wants to track more objects and do more things in VR than just, controllers and input, and it opens it up to everybody else. Especially if you're a small peripheral team that's got a great idea. You want to put, the Trinity VR guys, they came to our office, they were showing us the baseball, and I was trying to hit this pro pitcher so bad, and really slow my bat speed got. But, they had the controller with this banana wand sticking up the other end of it, swinging, and I'm swinging really hard. It was really kind of uncomfortable, and I was afraid that I was going to snap the controller off the bottom of the bat. Well, when we saw the when the engineering team showed us the tracker, I called Trinity right away, and I was like, hey, you got to put this thing on the bottom of the bat, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be so much better. And we just immediately started thinking about all the ways and all the things that it's going to be easier for partners to be able to get involved that will work with Steam VR, with the tracking, and with our headset. And we just said this is going to open things up much faster, much wider. And just like, when we went back to 2014, 15, where we were talking to a really small subset of developers, we did the same thing with the tracker. We called 30 developers and said, hey, do you want to develop something with a tracker to work with your experience and so on? They all gladly took this thing, and we got, I think, 13 to 15 different experiences at CES this past year. Yep. We were hoping for 2 or 3 or 4 really cool ones, and we had 15. We were okay, we don't.
Everything coming out of CES looked amazing. Just like from the kind of the back seat that we're facing, seeing all the stuff that the trackers were able to do it was incredible.
And once we did that, it just got retailers so excited because they now just had this vision of a VR system on a wall, and pegs filled with accessories all around the product now, things that will work with it. And so, their eyes just lit up, with, okay, great, you guys are thinking about this not only to make developers excited and happy, you're thinking about how to make retailers excited and happy, and then thus consumers, right?
On that point, I don't know if you can speak to this at all, but does HTC have any plans on coming out with peripherals that would attach to, or any Valve other partners working on products to attach the trackers? Or because that was a question I always had, kind of watching at what people were messing around with at CES. You see all these really cool things, and you're wondering, when can I buy that, and how is that going to enter my home? So I didn't know if you guys were working on that side of things.
We are. We're working on a lot of different, we're working with external partners, we're working on our own ideas. We don't talk about future products that we haven't yet, but...
Yeah, and I'm not trying to, that was just a curiosity I had from looking at how the trackers worked.
We have met developer teams, every AAA studio has asked us for trackers. We have every engineering and every medical team that we've been working with has been asking us for trackers. We barely can keep them in stock, with just selling it to developers. People are coming up with body tracking software solutions. There's a lot of prototyping. I feel like the trackers are where, the developers were a year ago in terms of coming up with, software experiences to work with the Vive at launch. And it's just the ideas are getting crazy, the things that it's working with. I mean, Master of Shapes, I think, had or Dot Dash had the experience where you had a camera and you could take pictures in your VR experience and then print them out on a printer. And then Master of Shapes had one where you could actually attach a tracker to your phone, and the person looking at the screen on their phone could see what the person that was wearing the headset could look at.
That's so cool.
Like, I never saw that one coming. I totally expected the sword. I totally expected the gun. I expected the baseball bat. I didn't see the fireman solution.
Yeah.
Which seemed pretty involved, I might add. Like, that was one of the ones that I watched, and I was like, wow, you are a fireman in that situation.
But did you actually see, like, what that experience was? Like, did you try it?
No, I haven't tried it. I just saw, like, it was more than just the trackers, right? It was...
Oh, my gosh. So the tracker was on the edge of, like, what a real, fire hose feels like. But there was a full retractable haptic cable. So when you put the pressure down for the water, it actually pulled your whole body back. And if you weren't leaning in, it would pull you back on your rear end.
That's crazy.
And then the jacket, the fire coat was filled with heat coils. And so as you got closer to a fire in the VR experience and the smoke was kind of pushing your body down, your jacket heated up.
That's so cool.
And so you're leaning in to hold this hose with your body, and while your body heats up because it feels like it's near a fire. It was just amazing. It was a brilliant idea. I mean, granted, that was for professional firefighters, and
sure.
It was a brilliant idea. And the baseball bat was also built for professional baseball players to train against real pitchers. But so you have some pro use cases, in there that might not apply to end users. And I saw that where I was like, oh, CES, people think we're going to have swinging baseball bats in living rooms and smash
But it really does show that, the diversity of applications that VR has. We talked with other developers in the past, and I think Logan Olson was one of the first to kind of tell us, there's always going to be a spot for gaming whenever a new technology comes out. But it's really the enterprise solutions that will be interesting to see. And we're in year 1, year 1.5, year 2 now, and stuff like this is already going to change a lot of the ways that people in these other industries either train or prepare or even maybe function at their jobs, which is actually really impressive and exciting.
Sure, I think I have a little bit of theory on this one, and I think it's holding true. Since day one of working with gaming studios, whether it was indies or AAAs or startups, these are developers that really understand creating models and experiences in a 3D space and in a 360-degree space. The number of developers that really understood how to do this and do it at 90 frames per second and keep people comfortable and keep people excited and have just a experience that brings them kind of just pure joy, that they want to go back in and do again. The combination of skills that you need to have, from game engine knowledge to creating experiences to just making people have fun, are really game developers. Now, I do think the non-game space in a few years, from an application standpoint of what people will use it for, will be bigger than the game side. But I actually do believe very, very strongly that the game side of things will continue to be the innovation platform for so many of those verticals to leverage and take advantage of. And I think a lot of the innovation is going to continue for many years to come from the game studios and from the game side of things. I think that I'm seeing that happen today. I know a developer team that works for a major home, a home retailer, big box retailer, and they are ex Call of Duty, game devs, and they're now teaching people how to tile a bathroom and tile floors and build projects. And I'm like, that is amazing to me that a game dev team is totally teaching people now how to do home repair.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so you just kind of see like this transition, right, immediately of really, really smart game devs, and the knowledge that they have and the tools and the capabilities to create these experiences. That's what's actually, going into the non-game space. And, I've met with, rooms full of magazine partners, and, people are thinking about how to how to bring digital content to people in VR, and they have no clue where to start with this stuff. And I keep telling them, like, hey, you need to talk to game studios. There are tons of them that are willing to do this work for you, because they would love to create these types of experiences, whether it's for a game or whether for Time magazine. It's that's where the knowledge and the expertise is right now.
Because, like you said, it's all about the experience and leaving, with a sense of happiness and enjoyment and wanting to come back. And I feel like, game developers know how to do that better than anybody. And really, to some extent, all software forms are kind of like a pseudo game in a sense. You do something and you get kind of feedback back, and so that's really interesting and exciting.
Well, too, you just see. I've tried some experiences that were very non-game focused, and while they can be really interesting, if they don't have some level of gameplay in them to make it fun, they just put that uncontrolled smile on your face, you're really kind of missing the point. I take the Apollo 11 experience in my own son, and he did this experience on his own, put the headset on, and had it set up, and I was very worried that he was in Brookhaven. So wanting to get in there, and I keep saying no, but he was in there, and he's sitting in the family room, just Indian style, legs crossed. He's watching the 9mm video of JFK's speech about going to the moon, and then he's sitting next to Neil Armstrong, doing tasks in the lunar module, and he's landing. 15 minutes later, he came out of the headset, and he comes over and talks to me. He's like, "Hey, do you know JFK is?" And
Wow.
and do you know Neil Armstrong? And, do you know about the lunar landing? And he just kind of like started unloading the whole experience on me. And I was like, wow. And I asked him flat out. I was like, hey, was that fun? Did you have fun doing that? He was like, that was the best. That was so much fun. And I was like, yeah, okay, I got it. That's definitely going
you can't
to
have
continue to, but you really need that gameplay in there to make it really fun and interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean the implications for, education in general too, and how immersive you can get. I mean, that's something that I'm curious to see how it'll develop. And, we've already talked with developers who are doing stuff in the medical field, and it's just really fascinating to see, how this is going to affect that side of it. And like you said, just also make it fun.
Yeah. Well, I think, you have school, and you have an educational system that today depends highly on, dictation and audible input, if you will, where teachers are talking and kids are expected to consume that information. Some kids have a real block, when it comes to that. They just can't focus that way. They can't learn that way. And they're really, really smart kids. And in a lot of ways, the current methods don't apply to all the different types of learning styles. And I think the education market has really done a nice job over the last several years opening themselves up to the exploring new methods for, teaching kids. But when I look at some kids, like, they are straight up, visual learners. And I feel like VR really can be that great equalizer, and that allows those kids that learn that way, learn through visual input and experiential input, as opposed to just audible input, that this is going to be something that's going to just really open things up and really make it impactful for these kids that might not be able to be successful with traditional methods. So I'm really excited about it. I don't think it's going to replace education. I think it's going to augment it, and it's going to bring a new light to it, and some new methods to execute it. And I just can't wait for that.
Yeah, no, I agree, because it's like you said, it's not just visual, but a lot of people learn by doing, and with VR, you can have a lot of just virtual doing in order to have people learn whatever it is they need to learn. Whereas before, they were either, if maybe they were only limited to visual, but being able to actually use their hands and their body in a way that would allow them to pick up the material or whatever it is a little bit quicker.
Yep, and you look at it too from like a model. I mean, there's the learn by doing, and then there's the modeling perspective of autism is something that's very near and dear and close to my heart, and solving problems for this area. And I look at like young kids that really struggle with social interactions on a playground, right? Like that is the most daunting things. I've met kids, and I know kids that they do great in school, and going out to the playground is terrifying. And if they have a bad experience out there with their peers because they just can't navigate that, it unravels them for the rest of the day, and it's like they can't even function for the rest of the day and do what they're there to do, which is learn. And so it's like you can actually use VR for like modeling and helping kids learn how to navigate and be successful in those types of social situations. Man, you're just doing good things.
Yeah.
And that's going to be helpful.
Really, the sky's the limit with this stuff, honestly. Like looking forward, I mean, there's really like unimaginable, numbers of possibilities.
So Daniel, we want to be respectful of your time, so we just have a couple more questions as we wrap up. The first of that is, I guess, just looking forward. First looking back, 2016 was a big year for VR, a big year for you guys, and I would say that there were definitely a lot of wins for HTC for the Vive. Looking to 2017, what would you consider a big win for 2017? Are there any goals that you can share with us? It doesn't have to be something specific, but just, I guess, in what you're trying to do in the industry. Looking forward, what's something that you might consider a big win for 2017?
I think a big win for 2017 is a show of force in that we are expanding our ecosystem. Like you get to hear from us that we have Vive actually equals many things right now. It equals the technology, right, which is the headset and the things that actually allow you to have that VR experience. We have things like ViveX, and continuing to accelerate the different types of solutions you can do in VR. And helping bring those things to light. We have our own Vive Studio team, which is just working with first party, second party, third party. And then we have Vive Port, which is a content distribution store. We want to see all of those things be successful in thinking about the industry as a whole and how we do that. And then, thinking about it from like really delivering on that promise that we started at CES of the ecosystem piece. If we're finishing up the year with multiple partners, that have taken on using the tracker, and they've brought additional solutions and enhanced the experience that you can do in VR. And you'll see, new products and new family products to the portfolio to work, to represent the Vive brand. Those are all big success points. I mean, for us in 17, it's really cementing ourselves from a partner level and from an ecosystem level to kind of get us kicked off for 2018 and beyond, because 16 was really the off. 17's really just cementing themselves for the future, growing the ecosystem of things that will work with Vive. And then as we go into 18, we look at what the future holds from the technology standpoint.
Yeah, Viveport is something that Ronnie and I are both excited about. The subscription model, there's a lot of great titles on there. So the ecosystem on the software side is, I think, something that we're really looking forward to experiencing from the consumer end.
Yeah, likewise, it's nice to see someone taking a leadership role on that front, because you guys, to a large extent, we're kind of the leaders on the hardware side, for that initial push, and then seeing you guys branch out on the software side is also great to see and very exciting. So,
Well, you'll kind of hear us from the very beginning. All of the things that we did from even the early developer edition to year one to 2016, everything you look at, like how Valve interacts with developers, it's about making developers successful and making them money.
Yeah.
Viveport is another method and another piece of the ecosystem tool for developers to be successful and to make money. The subscription model is another tool, an avenue for developers to make money, and a way for consumers to get exposed to a lot of things, and for a pretty low cost barrier. And so, if we make developers successful, if we grow the ecosystem and bring more partners in from a hardware standpoint, from a software standpoint, we'll continue to see, VR grow and get to that chasm and cross the chasm and get us to that early majority where we see the real growth numbers go crazy. But we got to get there. We have to do the right things now that makes developers successful and sound, and then we got to keep pushing, and then we'll get to that early mass.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And so actually, on a related note, you guys are working on getting there. And what I wanted to ask for us as VR enthusiasts, for our audience, who, if they don't already own a Vive, they're listening to a podcast about the HTC Vive because they at some point want to get one. But this is the group that wants to support. So what can we do? How can we help from our end in terms of getting the word out there? Obviously, I think I'm not alone in terms of having VR parties every weekend and showing it to someone new whenever I can. But from your perspective, what is something that we can do or Vive owners can do to really help create that ecosystem, help create just the huge community that's starting to build around VR and the Vive specifically?
So, first and foremost, thank you guys for having me on here today, and just the opportunity to speak to the community, and I want to say a huge thank you to the community, because not only what you guys have done just in growing the enthusiasm, growing the awareness, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank the developers that have bet big on VR and come in and built great experiences. We can't thank them enough. But we're in a position now where we're extremely thankful for all of these guys and how and what they've done for us, over the last couple of years and this past year, and continue to do. I think it's really important that we continue to show people, have as many parties as you can. But it is one of those things where we have to get past those pragmatists, that might be skeptics, right? And we got to convince more people, and we got to show them what the promise of VR is. And so, in a lot of ways, that just takes putting the headset on and getting blown away. I do it every weekend at my house. Somebody new experience it for the first time. We have programs that we're going to be building out here very soon that are specifically for evangelists. And to grow their community. And we're going to actually be announcing that pretty soon how do I put it? We want to entice the community to kind of keep growing in those hotbeds and in those spots and grow the community more and further. Just for VR in general, like show all things VR. You don't have to just show Vive. Like, we're not here to just be selfish. We need the ocean to raise, because all ships will come up with it. Mm-hmm. And so we do want people to actually get out there and really be evangelists for VR first and foremost. And we hope that our story comes through really well with that. But it's really right now, it's about actually just getting more people into the headset, getting more people exposed to it. The base of the who we're talking to, who we're selling to, who's in that consumer matrix right now. They are early adopters. They are early innovators. And so we just got to keep growing these communities, and then it will grow into those mass markets. It will grow into the mass consumer, and they're understanding the value of it.
Absolutely. Well, for everyone listening, you guys heard exactly what we need to do. Just keep having more and more parties. So that shouldn't be a problem. Last question for you, Dan, before we go. You got to tell us what's the game with the top amount of hours of gameplay that you got on your personal Vive at home?
Ooh, that's hard because my son has been playing more than me lately. So it looks like, I still play. I spend a lot of time in Google Earth. I spend a lot of time in Space Pirate, although I just can't. Even with like tips and help from Dirk, I just can't get it. I think I'm at an age where there's just a younger, more nimble body that just does much better in that game than I can.
It's one of those things where you feel like you're doing well, and then you see everybody else's high scores, and you're just like,
I've been there.
I spend a lot of time. I still spend a ton of time in Longbow. It's just something I'm solely addicted to. I think I made it to level 38 in there, and I saw that I was like still like over 1,000 from like the breaking into the top 1,000 list. So I'm trying to break into the top 100 on that one. But I spend a lot of time also in the gallery. From Cloudhead.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Those guys, Denny and the Cloudhead teams just did amazing work. Amazing work. I love just being in the experience and just admiring everything that's in it and the attention to detail. They've just done such an amazing job. And if it was my son talking right now, it would be Job Simulator. He is crushed finished that game so many times. So he just yeah.
Oh, well, those last two are obviously the ones that came as launch titles. So I got my Vive when the gallery was the launch title, and I agree with you 100%. There's just something about that game that transported me to an island and made me want to search for my sister, and it was it's really incredible what they've done.
Yeah, there's games that I love. I love Servios and Raw Data. I can't wait for the commercial launch of that product. But those guys are done an amazing job too.
100%. We actually just had them on the show last week, so we'll be hopefully posting that episode soon. But Daniel, again, thank you so much for the time. We really do appreciate it. I know our audience is very much looking forward to this, and we will continue spreading the good word.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.